Right, hello everybody. So what I'm going to be doing in this recording is talking to you about 5 key points that we need to know for any diagrams. So as a recap, we've now covered the revenue diagrams, which is where we've looked at average revenue, marginal revenue and total revenue. We've covered the cost diagrams where we've looked at average cost and marginal cost. And what we've also started to do is think about an individual model of competition. So we've looked at perfect competition so far, up to the point where we're going to start combining those diagrams to show what happens in a perfectly competitive market. But before we can do that, we need to think what a firm might be trying to achieve. In economics, we call those objectives. So what might the firm's objective be? And you can see on the list here, the top one is the one we go to by default. So unless we get some other information, we say that all firms we look at in economics are going to be trying to maximize their profit. Okay, now you might think this is a sort of obvious given that firms want to maximize the profit, but there are a couple of things we just need to be clear about. So when we're talking about profit, we mean revenue is greater than costs. Okay, so that's what we mean by profit, and in one of the other sessions I've talked to you about it being called supernormal or abnormal profit. Okay, so when will the firm decide to stop making its products? At what point will the firm say that's enough? When will it set its level of output? Remember, that's the key thing for us. We know that the firm can control its output, but certainly in a perfectly competitive market, it can't control the price at all. So the thing it's in control of is its output. And we say that the firm will carry on making its products so long as the revenue it gets from each one is greater than or at least equal to the cost of making that last one. And that's where we come back to this idea about marginal, the decision made by the last one. So for this, we need to know that marginal revenue is at least equal to marginal cost. So when this happens, when we get the situation that marginal revenue is equal to marginal cost, so the cost of making the last one is equal to the revenue we get from selling that last one, the firm will say, right, stop, we're not going to make any more. If we keep making them, the marginal revenue will become lower than marginal costs. We don't want that to happen, because that means that we're paying more to make the product than we're actually getting back in sales from it. So the first really important condition when we look at the diagrams, which I'll be doing in the next session, is that marginal revenue has got to at least equal marginal cost, and we assume firms will carry on making products until that happens. Okay, so that's what we think firms will want to do almost all of the time. But there are some other situations where firms might have different objectives. So the first one we're going to look at those is revenue maximization. The firm may have a situation where it just simply needs as much money in as it can get, perhaps to maximize its cash flow. So you'll see at the moment lots of firms are having sales, perhaps even not making much profit, or if any profit, on the items, but it's just to get the cash into the business. So from our earlier diagrams, we know that revenue maximization happens where marginal revenue is actually equal to 0. So the revenue from the last one we sell is 0. And if you visualize the graph or the diagram, marginal revenue is a downward sloping line. Anywhere to the left of the point where it crosses the x-axis, marginal revenue is positive, and that means that if we keep making products, we're increasing our revenue. It might only be a very small amount, but it is still above zero. When it's equal to zero, that last one doesn't add anything to our revenue, but if we go past that point on the x-axis, then what happens is marginal revenue becomes negative and our revenue falls. Okay, so it looks a very quick freehand sketch, like that. So marginal revenue crosses the x-axis there. Where that happens is the maximum point for revenue. Okay, so next one is sales maximization. And that might be where the firm is trying to increase its market share, possibly. It's not really bothered about profit at the moment. It's simply trying to get customers. So it might be launching a new product. And that will happen. The firm will say, right, okay, we'll keep making products until average revenue, which we know is the demand curve, is equal to average costs. Okay, at that point, the total amount of money we get in, which will be the quantity we sell multiplied by the average revenue, which is the price people are paying for it, will be equal to the total amount of money going out, which is the cost to make one on average, the average cost, multiplied by however many we're making. So when that happens, our total revenue will become equal to our total cost. Firms would prefer not to be at that point, but they'd accept that if their objective was just simply to sell as many as they could. They wouldn't want total cost to be greater than total revenue. Okay. Again, you'll see these when I come on the next one and draw the diagrams. So they are the ones that we look at as economists linked to revenue, linked to selling the product. Okay. The next two really aren't as important to the firm overall. So we've got productive efficiency, which is when the firm's producing at the lowest possible cost per unit on average. Okay, now again, we've looked at this, and hopefully you've copied the diagram from the earlier PowerPoint or the earlier presentation into your notes. And we're talking about average cost. If you can remember, the average cost diagram looked a little like this. And the average cost was at its lowest point there, where marginal cost went through the bottom of the average cost curve. And that's always happening. That's got to be the relationship between those two curves. So if the firm was operating a productively efficient output, what would happen is we'd see its output on the x-axis here was directly underneath that point there. Okay, if it was productively efficient. It's probably not that bothered about that. It will want to be as efficient as it can be, but it's more bothered about its sales and the cost of the last one to produce. Okay, so that's more of for us as economists to compare how efficient different markets might be. And the final one, allocative efficiency, we did mention when we talked about market failure in the first year, and this is where the cost of producing the last one, so again we're back to this idea of margin, so the cost of producing the last unit, which we know is the marginal cost, is equal to the value society give it. So the value society give to the product. So the cost of producing the product, cost of the resources being used to make this product, is equal to the value society give the product. Now, how do you reckon we could do that? How do we know how much value an individual, or if we're looking at a group of people, that group of people give to a product? How much do you value now? How much would you value now a can of Coke or a packet of Maltesers or whatever it is you're thinking about? And remember, that's a really tricky thing for us to measure how much people value different things. So what we do is say, well, how much would you be prepared to pay for whatever it is we're talking about? So how much are you prepared to pay for something? We know we can tell how much people are prepared to pay for something by the demand curve. And we also know that when we're looking at theory of the firm, the demand curve is actually the same as the average revenue curve. So for allocative efficiency, where we're thinking about how much does one unit cost to make, the last unit, how much did that last unit cost to make? We know it's a marginal cost, and if it's efficient for society, we'd say the cost of those resources is equal to the value society give the end result, the product, so average revenue. So where marginal cost and average revenue cross, we would have allocative efficiency. Okay, so I'm going to scroll back down, see if I can fit all those on one page. There you go. Those are 5 really important concepts. Okay, so for each of them, what I've tried to do is give you the condition or the point on a diagram. And we'll always use a diagram to illustrate these. So where the two curves intersect, where I put the stars, those are the points that you'll need to learn as we go through this section of the course to be able to illustrate these on a diagram. Okay, so where those two curves cross, or that crosses the axes, they are the 5 conditions that are really important. So make sure you've taken some notes from this page. Okay, thank you.